Hello and welcome to this KIPS vlog. Today I have with me Jason Dolby, the president of Cali Caveman Strength and Conditioning and co-head instructor of the Orange Kettlebell Club. There he is right there. I am Tyler Valencia, president of the Kinesiology Institute of Performance Specialists, KIPS. Today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about running performance. So we know that when we're looking at a runner, whether it be an endurance runner or even recreational runner, there's a variety of items that we could work with them as a trainer to improve their efficiency, so the running economy. So there's technique, there's stride length, there's stride frequency, and a combination of these will work into improving their running. So running is something that's applicable to many people. So like I said when we started this, it's not just the endurance runners that we're trying to talk about and hit today, but like I said, we got Jason here. We're going to talk about kettlebells. So Jason, what is it that when you're starting with somebody, what are maybe some stretches that you work with them to maybe open up the hip complex?
Right. So first things first, runners for sure, just like almost anyone else anywhere that does pretty much anything, right? Being able to stretch the hip flexors in the front of the hip is really, really important. And stretching those out allows us to fire the glutes more efficiently. The gluteus maximus, the butt muscle, right? The big powerhouse, the big driver that drives us forward. In order to get the glutes to respond really well, it's great to stretch the hamstring. So there's a handful of wonderful hip flexor stretches you can do, whether you're on one knee with a foot forward on the ground, leaning forward, and lunging forward and then leaning back, and so on and so forth. So you can look a lot of those up. But there's a couple of interesting ones that I like to share with my students before they're going to lift kettlebells. And one of them is just really, really simple. And what you'll do is you'll take kind of a strength band, and of course, depending on the person or the body mass and the height and so on, you experiment, trial and error, find what's best for you. But get that the rubber band, the strength band, and loop one end of it around anything, right? Like a pole. You can loop it around a machine, maybe in your gym or something like that. And then you want to kind of set it around hip level or a little bit lower, and then you'll step inside of it. So you'll actually step inside, and then you'll take the strength band and sort of wrap it around your waist, just below where your belt would be, right? If you're wearing a belt, so just below it, just at the top of the butt muscle right there. And you're going to step back, step back, step back until you feel a nice resistance, and then what you'll do is stand there in what we would say kind of a kettlebell sport specific position, like if you're going to do some swings or maybe some long cycle training, whatever it may be, to have your feet in that position that you are going to hold when you perform with kettlebell. So when you're in that position, now you have this band that's pulling you forward. It's pulling your hip and your trunk forward, right? So it's sort of a passive hip extension. And it's really an interesting thing. So it's not super active, but you can make it active with just a couple of tweaks, which is really cool. So you're inside this band, it's pulling you forward. Your goal is to actually keep your legs straight because a lot of times when people are working with the kettlebell at the top of their swing, or sometimes even in a rack position in a kettlebell sport, they will have bent knees, which is very challenging because it's blowing out the quadriceps and you're losing a lot of energy that way. So you don't want to do that. You want to stand nice and tall with this stretch, legs nice and straight, and just imagine that you're being held up by your bones and nothing else, right? And just nice and relaxed. And so you can stand super relaxed while this rubber band pulls your trunk, your waistline forward. So it's kind of a passive stretch for the hip flexor and it's very nice, and it also kind of sets you up for a nice healthy position at the top, whether you're going to go into the rack position with two kettlebells, or if you're just going to do swings, which is nice, so you can kind of finish that hip extension as we drive through. Now, once you're inside the band, you don't have to just stand there and remain still. What's really cool, there's a couple things you can do once you're there. You can roll the pelvis forward and back, right? Anterior, posterior tilt. You can also shift from side to side, shifting the pelvis from side to side. And then you can also perform circles, right? Clockwise and counterclockwise while this band is around you. And it's really, really super cool. It's super simple to do. And I find that once you go through a couple rounds of that exercise, and it doesn't really matter if you're an experienced kettlebell lifter or not, this will help open you up for a much better full extension at the top, for your hips to extend forward, for your knees to extend, for you to have a nice tall posture at the top. So whether you are a runner, whether you're a martial artist or a kettlebell lifter, this will be a very, very nice kind of a kettlebell training specific stretch for you to open up the hip complex.
That's great. That's great. I know that right now we actually see a lot of research coming out on the hip extension versus say squats or versus deadlifts, and seeing how much working those hip extensions, so maybe weighted hip extensions, which I think are very popular these days due to an innovator in our industry, Brett Contreras, or even Ben Bruno. They do a lot of these hip extensions primarily to build the glutes, and how we've been saying, it's the glutes that are a primary, muscle inside of running. So a great little stretch right there. Now, Jason, what about an exercise that you commonly use with runners that can apply to performance?
Sure. Thank you. Great question. So running, as Tyler, you and I have discussed a few times, running is just it's super popular, right? Why not? I mean, we were pretty much built to do that. Walking, running, super popular. You don't need a gym, you don't need anything, you don't need any weights. And also too, running is, if you go out and push yourself, even if you're out of shape, you just slow down and start walking if it becomes challenging. There's not a real threat. There's not heavy weights that you're dealing with or anything like that. So it's super, super popular, very, very common. And what I find is that runners, for the most part, they're running distance, and for the most part, they're running on a flat surface. I mean, maybe the incline, decline may vary a little bit, but when they go out and hit the road or hit the pavement, for the most part, they're dealing with kind of flat surface. So they're moving their body, driving forward, moving their body, but they're not under a lot of load, right? So if they just did that, there's not a whole ton of strength training involved in that as far as getting stronger, especially through hip extension if you're just kind of cruising on a level plane. So an exercise that I would for sure recommend to runners, and when they come see me here at the cave, I recommend the kettlebell swing. It's a super popular exercise, but it's also super effective, and it's really, really great because the swing, again, it improves strength and power in the glutes, right? And also the hamstrings, which are our hip extensors. So when you're running and you push off, what's actually driving you forward is, your posterior chain, right? Your butt, hamstrings, those guys, the calves, driving you forward. So the kettlebell swing allows you to incorporate a form of strength training for a runner that isn't necessarily daunting, right? Kettlebell, pretty much almost as heavy as you want to go with a kettlebell, is sub-maximal in load compared to some of the wild and just amazing things that you see in powerlifting or Olympic lifting, where they are moving a serious amount of weight. And maybe a runner who just wants to increase a little bit of strength, but do it in less of a daunting fashion. The kettlebell is really nice because you can't accidentally go in and, oops, I accidentally put 4 plates on each side, right? Not going to happen with a kettlebell. So again, the swing, kettlebell's going back between the legs, and then boom, and then you extend through the hip and stand nice and tall. The weight comes out in front of you. You wait till the kettlebell drops with gravity, gravity, gravity until it reaches a point I call the trip wire, which is around your navel or pelvic area. You patiently wait until gravity brings it to that point, and then whoop, you pivot, right? And then hip flexion, boom, hip extension. So it's super great. What's also nice about the kettlebell swing for a runner is that they can build that strength and that power through the glutes and the hips without having to go out and hit interval training on a hill. Sometimes runners who even run for distance like to just pull in some interval training on hill sprints and so on, but maybe they don't want to necessarily hit those hill sprints and put risk on tightening their calves that are probably already tight anyway, right? Because they're runners, and they can use the kettlebell on flat ground in an interval style, and I think that's really one of the best exercises a runner can get from kettlebells is the kettlebell swing, boom, hip extension, right? You're focusing on developing the strength in the glutes and the hamstrings that drive them forward anyway, but at the same time, you're using this load, and you're able to use this load with your whole body. Kettlebells are sort of an extension of your body. Human movement is very fluid. Attaching the kettlebell to your hands, cool. You just grab it and flow. And there's less risk of injury versus running out and finding a crazy incline and just blowing yourself out on sprints, which is great. It's going to help increase that power with your hip extension, your glutes, and your hammies. But I think it's a bit more controlled to utilize a kettlebell. And then the other thing is too, is that the runners, where they need structural integrity most is probably through the hip, because that's what they're doing all day, baby, right? Those hips are moving, moving, moving. And to have strong glutes is super important, really in any sport. But if you're a runner and that's all you do and that's all you train is just distance running on a flat surface, maybe the strength, the overall strength of your glutes and the musculature in your hips, maybe it's not so strong. And when you don't have strong glutes, you're more prone to injure yourself in many ways, right? A long time ago, forgot who mentioned it, but somebody who I was learning from through NASM, like this was probably year 2000, 2001. And they said, think of the glutes like the steering wheel to the lower body, right? And it was really cool. Hold on tight. If there's going to be a bumpy road, and real life is bumpy, right? Hold on tight to that steering wheel so that if you hit a divot or a pothole, your car doesn't go apeshit and, off of the road or something crazy. So having that strength in the glute will create kind of a structural integrity for the runner so that their steering wheel to their lower body is held on to firmly. So you prevent injury. Guess what that does? It it takes away the amount of healing or recovery days that you may experience through a year from injury, right? So the safer and stronger you are through your glutes and that whole pelvic girdle, the less chance you have for hurting yourself. And that means more time for your natural running training and so on. Also, too, aesthetically, your wife, your husband may appreciate that as well. Hey, a strong backside is healthy on so many levels. So, yeah, kettlebells are, I think they're absolutely key for runners that don't get a lot of other strength training in on their own, and portable in the trunk of your car, man. You keep that sucker linked in the passenger side of your car. Put a seatbelt through it. Trust me, put a seatbelt through it. Lock it down, right? But you can have your kettlebell anywhere. Little, you travel to a hotel, whatever. You can crush that in the parking lot. You can get a little done in the parking lot of your job after work on the way home. Doesn't matter. So I think it's really, really a wonderful tool, and that exercise I think it's simple enough, and it's not crazy complex. It's nothing's going overhead or anything like that. And the runner's objective is to be a better runner and to be safer, but with a little bit more power and more structural integrity through that whole gluteal area and through the hip complex. I think they're setting themselves up for a safer and and a better performance in the future with their running.
That's great. That's great, Jason. And when we always talk about performance, and it's important that when we as trainers need to understand that the performance is not just for athletes. This is for our everyday athletes that wake up, get out of bed, go to work. This is performance for them as well because running's for everybody. So Jason, thank you so much for coming to this vlog with me. I really appreciate it. Jason Dolby, make sure you check him out on social media. He is the
Boom.
president of Cali Caveman Strength and Conditioning in the South Bay, California, and also the co-head instructor of the Orange Kettlebell Club. Thank you again, Jason. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Tyler.